here we go again.
Hello, welcome to the PlayStation Library. I'm Jason Dvorak, and you're caught in the middle of a shouting match. While PlayStation's announcement of a diskless future, we finally have the fourth horseman of gaming's next transitional phase. Now, there isn't going to be a crash or the end of the hobby, but there will be a quantum shift in how it evolves from here. Trust me, I've been here before, 3 times running. We are on the verge of the next Game Plus restart of the entire video game ecosystem, and truthfully, it's about damn time. If you've come here expecting me to be caught up in the physical versus digital echo chamber, you will be sorely disappointed. Instead, I'd rather present a history lesson and show you how far this rabbit hole goes, and why it's always darkest before the dawn. For those of you almost not 50 years old, you'll be forgiven for not knowing about the first 3 horsemen of gaming's past. The first harbinger was when Atari's own ego took hold of them and wouldn't let go. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A game company and its third-party publishers keep releasing higher-grade versions of the hardware, but also keep churning out the same games, just remastered in a higher visual fidelity. Which means you're paying for the same game over and over and over again. Several factors begin to take shape, and the next thing you know, Atari is burying cartridges in the sand and the industry goes up in smoke, taking everyone and everything with it. But from the ashes of that entire debacle come the 8-bit and 16-bit eras, where then new technologies and true fan rivalries begin. Due to the still somewhat limited nature of the chosen hardware, gamers were bathed in incredible programming feats stored on the cartridges, not the systems. Legendary new series like Contra, Super Mario Bros., Sonic the Hedgehog, and Final Fantasy bring an unparalleled home experience. Arcade games have gone full experimental, pushing the boundaries of what they can show with Mortal Kombat and how a simple glitch can turn into a phenomenon with Street Fighter II. The two halves work together to create this incredible arcade room competition and at-home experiences. Arcades bring all new graphics and theatrical experiences, while consoles make sleepovers and Friday night couch co-op central to living. It's here in the 16-bit era where Nintendo slowly morphs into the second horseman. After years of brutal cartridge manufacturing contracts, exclusivity rights, and forcing publishers to form secondary companies to get more games out, their ego makes the ultimate mistake. They publicly betray Sony, leaving them and their Super Nintendo CD-ROM to go make do with Philips. The chain of events from that single move triggers a quantum shift in the industry. This was a miracle because this was when I almost left gaming. The 3DO was floundering, Atari's Jaguar was a joke, and the 16-bit consoles were finally showing their age. There wasn't anything on the Saturn I wanted to play at the time, and when all seemed lost, out came the PlayStation. In the span of a year from its release, Nintendo's stranglehold on the industry was loosened, and compact discs were the new weapons of the console war. Nintendo was suddenly no longer the dominant force it once was. The shockwave from the PlayStation's success broke them, and from here, they relegated themselves to just gimmicks and doing their own thing. Like releasing the same game every time. Sony's brilliant use of spite as a power source, as well as making the PlayStation as an experience for everyone, not just a children's toy, elevated the industry to a whole new level of profitability. Dads could be armchair quarterbacks in Madden. Moms could transition from the Game Boy Tetris to Bust-A-Move 2 and Rayman. Your uncle discovers Romance of the Three Kingdoms and is never seen again. Even better, developers start pushing the art form forward. Movie-like experiences from Squaresoft, including Parasite Eve, Final Fantasy VII, and Bushido Blade, are master classes in game development. The introduction of the CD-ROM begins the multimedia functionality angle with crystal clear soundtracks, real-life sounding sports announcers, and full-screen video. Arcade-first companies like Namco, Capcom, and SNK can bring home their quarter crunchers in ways never thought possible, with bonus materials and more. Internet capabilities are being tested in limited quantities, preparing for future hardware to eventually become entertainment hubs rather than just gaming systems that happen to do other things. This golden age of role-playing games, creative game concepts, 8-player couch co-op sports games, and more introduces an entirely new rivalry between Sony and then newcomer Microsoft. It is here where the house that Bill Gates built becomes the third Horseman, a movement I was intimately involved with. I was working for GameShark and Interact Accessories at the time of the PS2 and the Dreamcast. Right before I got to Interact, they had been providing Microsoft with controllers for the Xbox dev kits. GameShark even had a giant-ass banner in the main office hanging that said, "Thanks from Microsoft for all our help." Everything was going great until the announcement of the system having a hard drive and built-in internet connectivity. While we were busy being awed by Dead or Alive 3, Halo, and Project Gotham Racing, a ticking time bomb was hiding inside the big black box. To start with the personal side, the GameShark can now be locked out via a software update. It was the first step towards the demise of Interact and me losing my favorite job in the world. That was a lot of unemployment. The second plague, if we're keeping with the Horseman angle, was the DLC problem. Games like Return to Castle Wolfenstein and Unreal 2 had the extra features already on the disc. Players were allowed access to the content by downloading patches to activate them. This caused one of the earliest customer backlashes against the digital era, because gamers rightfully felt if they paid for something that was on the disc, it should already be available to them. As fate would have it, Microsoft would push the digital storefront further into the limelight with the Xbox 360 store. Combined with the launch of Steam, it was at that exact moment that video games ceased to be complete works. And of all the ironies, the Four Horsemen metaphor works way too well since the original paid DLC was horse armor. Oddly enough, DLC really isn't the problem per se, at least not as an entity. I lived and breathed downloadable content when it came to my favorite games. Every new release for a Mass Effect game was like another little Christmas for me. New packs and speed trials coming to the Tomb Raider reboots were super fun. I bought a PS4 Pro and a PS5 just for the Horizon DLC. Not that one. The problem was an overabundance of it, with the lack of curating it and timed events. I loved Fallout 76, even in all of its barren, empty, broken early days. But once I realized that items in their catalog could be retired, forcing you to either infinitely grind for the currency or use real-world cash for fear of missing out, I was out of that ecosystem just like that. The largest crimes, however, came from the fighting game and simulation genres. My beloved Street Fighter series, which I have logged in more hours than there are stars in the sky, was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Characters, costumes, stages, even basic color selections were scattered to the nickel and dime storefront. Street Fighter V was the last new Street Fighter game I'll ever buy, and with it being left incomplete on my system's hard drive. If I really need to throw a fireball, I have more than enough of its history sitting on one system to fulfill that need. Fair enough, this problem can and has been fixed, but in very limited instances. A big shout out to NetherRealm Studios for always providing an all-in-one pack, and to the publishers who follow suit with a final all-on-disc complete release. It's a start, but there's so much more work to do. Now, we could have an entire section here for the gambling type DLC, but other YouTube hosts have covered that far more in-depth and much better than I ever could. There is no argument that publishers and developers need to make money to stay in business, but it's becoming more abundantly clear in 2026 that a rift is forming between what both sides can afford, especially in a recession when people are losing their jobs or just trying to make ends meet. Which, since we're talking about money now, would be a good time to talk about the 500-pound fourth horseman in the room, Sony's decision to stop all physical media. The problem with outrage at this announcement is that Sony has a fairly ironclad defense of the move, and that single word is Steam. Note I didn't say it was right. I'm just saying the argument is sound. By removing every feasible overhead they can form from a physical production, case, manual, disc, publishers are saving vital cash that can be put back into development or marketing. As someone who worked in marketing for 10 years, that extra cash flow becomes incredibly vital to the survival of both the game's sales and the developer's very livelihood. Grand Theft Auto 6's announcement that it was not coming to disc, if ever, was Rockstar's own security blanket to make sure they can recoup as much development money as possible. To further drive that home, it's time to put to rest this hilariously stupid decade-long bullshit about pre-ordering. Pre-orders serve two purposes and two purposes alone, each different based on their physical state. With physical games, pre-orders acted as inventory control. If EB Games took in 100 pre-orders for a game, they knew a specific percentage more was all they would need to order in total to satisfy their launch needs. These numbers would then be sent to publishers in advance so they knew how much product would need to be manufactured and keep the budget to where it needed to be. When it comes to a digital storefront, paid in full pre-orders mean that the publisher is getting that money basically back instantly, which can then be put right back into the company overhead. Rent, utilities, salaries, marketing, app platforms, health insurance, and more can be safely covered while the game is still being worked on. Every new game I have ever wanted, I have digitally pre-ordered because I want to support the devs and publishers. That's how this works. It's rumored that Grand Theft Auto 6's production costs are already near or have surpassed $1 billion. $1 billion. If the pre-order numbers are to be believed, Rockstar already made that $1 billion back. A single game's cost is more than 4 countries' entire GDP combined. We have reached the threshold of a valuable game in development, and GTA 6 is the harbinger of gaming's next event horizon. The core argument here isn't about ownership on either side of the coin. It's about the survival of both the developer and the gamer. And the one true undeniable thing a physical product allows is a second life. As I've grown older this last decade, I have used my collection in a variety of financial ways, none of them intentional. I sold off my 8-bit and 16-bit libraries to act as the down payment for my condo. My Sega CD collection paid off my student loans, and my TurboGrafx 16 set paid off my credit card debt. In the last few months, I've sold off most of my Dreamcast collection to help fund Game-Rave endeavors. But it's my Saturn collection that fulfills that second life analogy succinctly. A month and a half ago, as of the recording of this video, I and a handful of coworkers all lost our jobs. By selling off some of my Saturn collection, I was able to buy myself 4 months to look for a job in what is the worst job market in my lifetime. I still have enough of the library left over to cover several more months if I need it, but I'll deal with that when the time comes. And yes, I'm still job hunting. But I do that knowing my collection has moved on to 1,000 different new libraries, continuing the cycle of enjoyment, exploration, and a second life. If those Saturn games were strictly digital, I would be homeless right now. A digital game is tied to the buyer, but with a physical game, the retailer and consumer gain a second chance of survival. I can't tell you what the future holds or what is right and wrong. What I can tell you is that a pattern is forming, where something in this beloved industry shatters the faith of its inhabitants, only to then be followed by a golden era of gaming and content. We just need to push through the physical pain of it all. Take care. I'm here when you need me.